Okay, hello everyone, welcome. Just a couple of seconds to give everyone some time to land.
Good morning, guys.
Hello. So everyone, just a couple of housekeeping things. So first of all, you guys are all muted right now. So we've muted your mics, but please give us a little message in the chat box that you can definitely hear us. And during the call, we would love if you guys ask questions, so you can write them down in the chat box. Or if you'd like to ask your question live and be brave, you can there's a little raise your hand button if you go to the participants list. So you can raise your hand and then we can unmute your mic to ask your question. All right. Thank you, everyone, that you can hear me loud. Is it too loud? I have a very strong voice, so maybe I'll just try to speak a little bit softer. Cool. So if you haven't met me yet, my name is Maria. I work for Aero Sports as a growth marketer, and I'll be your host today. And today, as our guest, we have Roy Janssen. Roy, do you want to say hello?
Hello, guys. Thank you for watching.
Cool. So we're going to do a little catch-up session with Roy, who's one of the pioneers of formation skydiving. He's been in the industry and in the sport for 25 years. Started skydiving when he was 16 and has about 9,000 jumps. He is a multiple world and international, local, European, continental champion. He's done everything possible you can pretty much in terms of competition and skydiving. And he's got his own company called Flight Dynamics, and he coaches both individuals and teams, both in the sky and in the tunnel. So welcome, Roy.
Thank you.
Just introduce yourself a little bit further down. Maybe tell us, like, in a nutshell, how did you get to where you are now? How did you become Roy Janssen?
Well, my skydiving career, so as you mentioned, started in 1995. So it sounds already ages ago, and I'm getting old, I guess. I started with a static line course. From there on, I just, kept doing my sport. I did some camera flying, I did some free flying, I did some wingsuit. And at some point, FS really got my attention. And I started getting more and more into it. And then at one point in 2002, we formed the team Hayabusa, which is now, of course, well known to most of the people in the skydiving community. We built up the team from 2002 until the end of 2006, just as a weekend team. And then we got the opportunity to join the army and become professionals. And from 2007, I guess everybody pretty much knows the story. We just became full-time skydivers, and the team is still running. And I was there until the very end of 2014. So in 2015, I left the team. I started becoming full-time coaching, and that's what happens in a nutshell.
That's incredible. So 25 years. I wonder, so first of all, anybody in the audience, I'm not a belly fly. I used to free fly. So to me, this is super interesting because I want to, obviously, I'm a very curious person. I want to know everything about everything. But feel free to ask questions, okay? But I would love to know, Roy, you've had such a long career in skydiving. If you now look back into, the 16, 18, 20-year-old self, and maybe if your first competition experience, like if you were to go back in time and now looking back, give yourself some tips on what to do, what would you tell yourself? How to prepare for the competition, and what is there something you might maybe do differently?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think at that moment I did everything wrong. I don't think there was much good to it, because at that moment, we as a team, and also me, we had the thought that before, so when you go skydiving and before the exit, you need to be pumped up, and you have to really get yourself really fired up for that jump. But that was totally the wrong thing, and we were sometimes so nervous, or I was sometimes so nervous, that I couldn't fly anymore. I felt like a piece of wood. The body was so stiff because it was way too tense. So by time, when you start looking in the mirror and you're gonna ask yourself a lot of questions, then you figure out that I was doing totally the wrong thing. So I think what is really important, and it's a thin line actually, to be like 100% ready for a jump or for a peak performance in general is that, yes, your body needs to be totally ready to fight for everything that is worth, but at the same time, the mind should be really calm. And I think that's a very tricky part, because most of us, we know the feeling, you know, particularly round one in your stomach, you feel that sensation, you know, like those butterflies flying, and you really want to do as good as you can, even better. And sometimes that is the problem. And everything comes actually back down to training. Because lots of people, when they train, they just, you know, they have fun, they play around, but they don't really put the same intensity into it than they should be doing. And the harder you train, the less difference in emotion and in performance you will have between training and competing. And I think that is really important. So the main thing is to stay calm and really practice this in the training. And don't think like, yeah, but you know, when it's competition, then I'm gonna be 100% in the game, and it's not gonna work. You know, you really have to train hard the way you should compete, because the smaller the difference between the two of them, the easier it gets, and the more confidence you will have. So the better you prepare your training, the more confidence you will get that you know that you can do the job. This will calm you down, and this will give you a lot of confidence. And when the team has confidence, you also will perform way better. But for sure, do not, you know, try to pump yourself up and be distracted and really. So really, if I look back to all the things that I did, is like that I think like, oh my God, you know, how how is it possible that I could fuck up so many things? But it takes time, you know. Also at the time, I didn't have anybody to tell us of what we should do or how you should do it, you know. This all, you know, own experience. And I brought 2 books with me just to show the audience, for who's ever interested in it. I have 2 books that really helped me actually a lot. I hope you can see it a bit. I don't know if you can see it from here. It's called Finding Your Zone. It's from Michael Larden. And another small book, I hope you guys can see it. It's the mental training for skydiving alive, and particularly Finding Your Zone. For me personally, it was really a book that helped me a lot. And it's been quite some years ago now that I read it, so I don't know the details anymore. But basically, it's not particularly about skydiving, you know. It's just, I think there's a lot of examples in it about playing golf. That it doesn't matter if you play golf or tennis or skydiving or motocross. A lot of things are mental, and those things are the same. And if you can practice them and you can improve them, you know, you will get better in competing as well. And I think that's really important. And one of the things that is also very valuable to me is, you know, put that mirror in front of you and really understand where you make mistakes. So for example, if I had a brain log in a skydive, or I felt super nervous that I find it really hard to keep breathing and stay calm and focus, you need to find out why is it. Because sometimes there are reasons why you have this, but you have to look sometimes deep inside and be really honest with yourself to understand, like, hey, you know, maybe I wasn't that good, or maybe I was nervous for this reason. And the more answers you have, the more you can fix it in your training. And this is always related, you know, you make a mistake, you go back to the training, you're gonna fix it, and you keep moving on like this. And that's really important to keep evaluating yourself every time, and it never stops, you know. But it takes some, well, I don't want to say some guts, but yeah, you know, sometimes you have to admit to yourself that you suck at something and somebody else is really good at it. And yeah, you know, it works like this.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing, what you're saying basically, is continuous improvement and building good habits from the beginning. And I was wondering, actually, if you don't mind recapping those names of the books, I'm just going to write them down in the chat box, and then I have a question to you after that.
Yes. So the first book is called Finding Your Zone. And the author is Michael Larden. That's Lardon.
Yeah.
I'll just show you one more time here in the book.
Perfect.
And the other one that also helped me with it, this is of course a bit more skydiving related, is called Mental Training for Skydiving and Life. And that's written by John DeRosiala.
you mind showing that name to me and I'll just pop it in here? John?
Yeah, so it's John de Rosiala.
There you go. So everyone, that's in the down the chat box right now.
I mean, obviously there are a lot of other books out there, but for me personally, those helped a lot. And also in everything with training or mental part, you have to find your own way. You know, some things that work for me doesn't help for somebody else, but the main thing is that you find your way into skydiving.
So one of the things I wanted to kind of get into with what you said about the beginning of your career, I think you mentioned something about like, oh, you didn't really have a guide with you. So do you mean that you didn't have a coach in the beginning? And what would your tip be now, because you're a full-time coach at the moment, for beginning teams? Would you recommend having a coach, or what would be the proportion of like learning from your own mistakes and figuring it out compared to having a coach who will take you through it?
Yeah, I think it's what is really important is, first of all, to ask yourself the question, what do you want? And if you know what you want as a team or as an individual, then you can make some choices like, hey, I want to really go for it, or I just want to have fun. Obviously, the more competitive that you are, the more important it will be that you will have a coach or somebody that helps you out to save time and money. If there's one person in the team that has quite a lot of experience and that can help you in the startup, you maybe don't need right away a coach. But I think it's if you have a good coach, a coach that fits with your team and with your personality, it's really gonna save a lot of money and time. So clearly, if you think about any other sport, doesn't matter which sport it is, if you have somebody that can guide you and that can teach you right away the right steps, it's gonna save you a lot of time and a lot of money. So is it good? Do I recommend it? Yes, for sure. But it's not that you need to have a coach every single time that you fly. If you have the resources to it, yes, of course, it's good. But also it's important that you learn to deal with it yourself, of how to train and how to work as a team, particularly in the debriefs, because a lot of teams that I see, they sometimes need to have a coach, but it's more to have somebody, you know, I almost want to say like as a vicar, you know, that hey children, stay, behave well, and this is something that you have to work on as a team. I think is that don't be scared to, do it just by yourself, but you have to learn. And I think there's something for everybody, that we all want to be good team players, but it's not something that we all are. I wasn't as good 10 years ago than when I'm now, because you make mistakes, and you have to learn from it, and yes, sometimes you need to, I don't know exactly the expression in English, but when you put water with the wine, I don't know the proper expression in English, but you have to make compromises at least. And this is sometimes hard, because you will see that the more people are competitive, the more stubborn they are. And when you have a team with 4 or 5 people or 8 people, doesn't matter, that are really competitive, they have strong characters, they're gonna be really stubborn, and that's not always easy to deal with. And this is something you also have to learn, and having a coach in the beginning, they normally can structurize this more to say, okay, he's the boss, it's gonna be like this, like that. Of course, we need to listen to all of you, but it's, particularly it's a learning process, just like a normal relationship,
Well, that's a really good advice. We've got a couple of audience questions, and we'll come back to them really soon once we kind of hop into a bit more of the mental prep. But I want to ask you, now that you were talking about team members, so if you were to give it any advice on, somebody who might be forming a team, what are the important things to consider when forming a team and picking your team members?
Yes, again, a lot of times I have people that ask me the same question, who should I pick? What should we do? How much time do we spend? I think it's not important at all what you want. We don't all want to be world champions. We don't all want to spend all our time and all our money, all of, or all our energy into team training. But what is really important is, as a team, you need to have a common goal. And whether it is to do 50 jumps a year or 500 jumps a year, that doesn't matter to me. But you need to have a common goal, make a clear agreement of what you want, and also follow through, of course. I think that's really important. And a lot of times what I see is that teams, they are formed, they just, at the bar say, hey, you want to do a team next week? Yeah, okay, do. They buy the same jumpsuits, the same rigs, and after a few months they split because it's not working. So it's really important for me. I always recommend for a team that starts, take your time, speak it through. What do you want? And have a common agreement about how you're gonna do it. And also, of course, keep your word. If you say that you're gonna do it, you have to come through, of course. And then build it up from there. And I would not start straight away with buying the same suit and stuff. That's not so important at the moment. First, see that that it works out, and then you continue. It's the same, if you have a relationship with your new boy or girlfriend, it's not because you're 1 week together that you're gonna buy a house together. You spend some time first to see if it works, and then you can invest more. That would be more my advice. But common ground is really important for sure.
That's really good advice, actually. So I'll take Joseph's questions, and LG, we'll come back to your question next. So Joseph is asking, how is it on professional level with the team spirit? Is it one of the most important things, or does it go to the background and the performance goes more to the front of the team?
Joseph, that's actually a very good question. I think the team spirit is really important. The more time you spend together, the more it will be important that the team spirit is good. We all know if the team spirit is good, then it's easier to hang out with each other, and it's easier to spend time. And if somebody has a bad day, it's easier to accept, like, hey, it's not a problem. The worst team spirit is, at some point you can get annoyed by every little thing, particularly the more time over years you spend together. Some little things can really trigger the mind, like, so that's not a good thing. But at the same time, when you're a professional team, usually after some years, you also know that you're professional and you have to deal with it the training day as good as you can. So yes, both parts are true. But the fact that you can say, okay, maybe this guy at the moment we have some argument, you have to put it aside. And the most important thing is the team goal. So for example, if you want to be a world champion, that's more important than anything else. So this also comes back to passion. If you really have a lot of passion, when you have really desire to win, everything that you have, it has to go for this goal, then you can put stuff aside. But clearly, everybody, when you have the choice, you want to get really along with each other. But if it's not, you just have to deal with it as good as possible. And I've seen a lot of professional teams where they look from the outside really good friends, that once you start to know people better and you speak with some of them, then you hear that all teams have actually the same problems, So it's not all gold and glory that shines from the outside. But I think this is normal, and this is in every professional sport, particularly in skydiving. You spend a lot of time together, and it's part of the road.
Yeah, well, that's what relationships are like, right? No matter whether it's in sport or private life. Listen, so we're about halfway through with the webinar now. So I'd love for us to move a little bit into the mental training, which I think is going to be really cool to hear from you since you're a full-time coach. And so I'll take a question from LG. She's asking, Roy, what were some reasons you identified for brain locks? And how did you work on that in your training?
Yes, also a very good question. And for me, the main reason why I had brain locks is because my distraction control wasn't as good as it should be. With that, I mean, for example, that maybe the easiest to imagine is if you think about a wind tunnel competition, for example. There's like sometimes hundreds of people around the wind tunnel, and when you walk toward the antechamber, there's a lot of people giving you high fives, talking to you quickly. And sometimes it got in my mind. And in skydiving, sometimes it was the same. Of course, personally, I find skydiving easier because once you're in the plane, you have those 10-15 minutes just by yourself, so it's very easy to focus the brain. But distraction control is something that, in my opinion, is super important, and is getting more and more important because more competitions they have, like live broadcasting, where you have where you can follow online. So you will have more cameras around you, and cameras sometimes is a very tricky thing. Sometimes you have a camera on your face and somebody comes for an interview quickly and people are cheering for you and everybody wants to say something, and that's all super kind. But at the same time, you have to really be careful that you stay focused and do not let go of the goal. So once you start that last phase of your competition round, whether it's a skydive or it's a wind tunnel competition, make sure that do not go off the road. Make sure that the mind stays where it should be, even if physically you're still giving a high five and say something, doesn't matter, but make sure do not disconnect from the main purpose in that moment. And I think it's maybe to some people it sounds a bit exaggerated now, but for me in that moment, the only thing that is important in the whole world is my round, how I perform and how I perform with my team. And that's maybe for just 5 minutes, but in that moment, nothing else matters. It's just this. And, maybe the body is showing you differently, but the mind is always where it should be. But this is a process that you have to learn. And it's not something that I learned overnight. It's years and years of experience, but that helps me a lot. Another reason why I had Brainlock is because I was stressed. I was stressed because I didn't have the confidence that I could do the job properly. In the beginning, as a young FS skydiver, it was mainly when you had slot switches in the jump. Sometimes I was nervous because I didn't do that B slot for me a lot of times, or I was nervous because sometimes I fucked up in training. And once I start to train with a better mindset, so I was more focused, then I build a lot of confidence from this. Because if I always work really hard in training and I do things good, or I learn to improve, that confidence I took into the competition. And then I could say, okay, I feel ready and I know what's gonna happen, because in training, I always put myself 100% for this goal. And this helped me to grow, and this started to make my Brainlocks less and less. And once, I think it was 2007, we had a week of coaching of Greg Gerard. And one of the things that he told me during this camp, and this is really something that got stuck in my head, he told us, like, you have to learn to love the fight. And in the beginning, actually now looking back, I wasn't happy to love the fight. Yes, I love competing because of the excitement and everything. But when it really came down to the wire, I was like, and once you can love really that fight, embrace also the negative things of the competition, when you have the nerves and you feel like, everybody knows this feeling, right? Then things becomes really pleasant. But it's embracing that whole experience that really helped me a lot, because I was enjoying it. And also, I was not just doing the competition, but also there was a personal motivation, is that I thought, okay, from the other team, let's say the French or the Americans, the guy in my same position, I want to do better than him. Because in some rounds, a certain person in the team has to do a really hard job. And then I always was trying to be better than the others. And for me personally, that was a good motivation. But of course, this was not in the beginning. This comes after years of training. But whatever reason you find to motivate yourself and to stay on track and stay focused, it's going to be helpful, and you have to find your own way in it.
Thank you. So what I'm hearing basically is, I think what you're saying is that this is even much more of a mental game than it is a physical game. Is that what you're saying?
I think it's both, but definitely you can be physically as good as you want. If mentally you don't have it right, you're not going to do nothing. Of course, the opposite is also true. If you don't train physically hard, then mentally you can be the toughest, but then you don't put the points on the table. I think it's a very I think the higher you get in the sport regarding averages, I think the more important it is that mentally everything is right. Because in the beginning, when you're a junior team, you maybe have a lot of points difference in scores between other rounds, between other teams. But the higher you get to the top, the less difference you will have. For example, if I look back to the last, let's say, 4 years or 5, 6 years in my career, because also last year I was still competing, then sometimes you lose a meet by 1 point. 1 point over 10 rounds is nothing, So that mental pressure really is very high. Or when we go back to 2012, the World Championship, when Hayabusa, we were fighting with airspeed in Dubai, it was like neck to neck all the time, and we went into round 10 having the same score, and then we lost by 1 point, So to keep everything mentally together in those moments is like super important.
So what are some of the things that you do personally that help you alleviate the stress? And actually this is there's another question from LG which kind of goes together with this, I guess, as she's asking, how do you deal with, or how do you embrace all the negatives in the moment and during the competition?
When I'm getting nervous, or when I feel like stressed, like I always gonna ask me, I try to understand, why am I nervous? What is the reason in this moment why I feel in a certain way? And then usually once I have that question, or once I have that answer to that question, I just put things in perspective and I think, hey, if I win or lose, I just give my 100%, and from there we will take it. And it's just, I would say, once you have a certain level of experience in dealing with these circumstances, you just get better at it, and will take less time to calm yourself down and to be less distracted. But for sure, every round you have, or every meet, you have some rounds where you feel more nervous. This is normal. That's also why we love this sport. It's one of the reasons why we have that sensation in our stomach and that 100% more mental focus that we love so much. Yeah? But dealing with it is just staying calm, accept the situation, and get on with it and enjoy it. Trying to enjoy it, because once I feel that bad, like then I also think like, hey, but that's the reason why I love this sport. That's why I love competing so much, and this brings me joy and put things in perspective, and yeah, that helps me.
Well, what about, like, okay, you've spoken a little bit about in the moment, but what about outside the moment? Like, how much is there things like visualization, or like what kind of supportive exercise do you do, for example? Like, do you meditate or run, or what are the other components that make you successful?
When I speak about the last few years, let's say the last 6-7 years competing, what helps me a lot is to not think about in between the rounds too much about the jump. Because I had some time where, for example, when you had four rounds during a world meet in a day, then I was thinking about the jump all the time, because I landed, I packed the parachute, I was thinking about the next jump, and maybe there were 2 hours in between or longer. But my mind was all the time at the jump. But then I was mentally so drained at the end of the day that, the further you go in the competition, the harder it got for me to stay fresh in the mind. So I had to learn to also let it go at the right moment. For example, once I landed, parachute was packed, we walked the jump, we creep everything, we look into the details. Then if there are no more questions, okay, I know what to do. Then I just let it go. And then maybe every, 15 minutes, I just visualize it again. I go through the moves, okay, I feel good, okay, and then I relax again. But I need to let it go. And one of the big mistakes in the beginning, that I was keeping all the time that jump in my mind, and I got drained like a vampire out of it. So that wasn't that good. But again, this is a personal thing. But for sure, if you focus too long in a time, you is gonna bite back at you. So you have to also be confident enough to let it go. But this is what I said in the beginning. When you go back to your training, then this is the place where you can learn all this stuff. And the more confident you are, the more relaxed you can be. But it means that you have to work your ass off in training.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for that. There's one question. We had a little warm-up chat with you before this call, and I brought up this question that you've answered before, and I want to hear it again, and maybe you want to elaborate on that. But what do you find is the most important ingredient to win?
I would say for definitely the passion and desire. I think this is the main ingredient to even be able to achieve it, you know, because there are some things you cannot buy with money, you know, and I think a real strong passion of what you want, it doesn't matter if this is in skydiving or in any other thing that you care about, but having the desire to be the best at your ability, I think this is really important. And I remember looking back when I was 16, 17 years old, you know, I was just a baby skydiver, you know, but I was so passionate about it. My mind was on skydiving all the time, you know, it has no limit, you know. And even now I'm still very involved with it, you know. I still have a big passion for everything that isn't, you know, that goes up. I would say all the vertical world I love a lot, whether it's climbing or flying planes or jumping, but passionate always got me through it, because I think it's not a secret for sure, but for every professional team you will have moments that is going to be really hard to continue, where you will question yourself, like, do I really want this? Do I still want to do an extra year? You know, is it worth it? And at the end, for me, yes, it's worth it, because I'm so almost obsessed about my goals that I set myself, and I had such a strong desire. Like, I really want this. I want this more than all the troubles it may be caused. And this put me and put us through at some really tough moments. And we've been lucky enough to become world champions, you know. Not everybody does, but that passionate and that drive, I think that's the main ingredient. It's more important than having money, because a lot of time I hear people say, yeah, but I don't have money. Trust me, when we started Hayabusa, we didn't have any money. I was still bringing newspapers in the morning. I went to work after school. I did everything I could, but this is the desire. If you really, really want something, you can do amazing things. And the question is always, how much do you want it? You know, are you willing to make the sacrifices? And clearly, we don't all need to make the same goal. You know, if you're happy to do, let's say, a 10 average and do 50 jumps a year, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. You know, it's passion to me is the main thing. Yes.
That's so beautiful. So you mentioned earlier, which kind of, I guess, goes into passion and emotion. You mentioned that there was a situation where you were fighting for the world championship and you lost by 1 point, but then later on, I think that was the next time around, you actually did win. And that's like, for anybody who's competing in skydiving, this is the ultimate goal, right? To win, to be the world champion. So what did that feel like? You know, like, now you reach your ultimate goal, and then what comes after that?
Yes. So I think that the main sensation that we felt is relief. Like that the pressure got off our shoulders, that finally we achieved our goal, you know, after many years of working really hard and sacrificing many things. Also for me personally, relief that was like, oof, finally we got it, you know, because the world meet before we lost by 1 point against airspeed, and then I think the next one I thought we won by 11 or something. But relief was a big thing, and then of course there's a lot of joy and happiness about it. But for me, the real pleasure of achieving the goal came actually a month afterwards. It had to sink in, you know, because when you win the world championship, yes, you know that you won, but it's the sensation of understanding that you really became the best of the world in that moment that took some time to sink in. And actually for me that was more enjoyable, because that's something for life. And it doesn't matter if in this case you win, or sometimes you can achieve a goal and become fifth, you can have the same sensation. But whenever you achieve something that you put so much time and money and effort into it and passion, once you achieve that goal that has been set, I think it can be the same feeling. It's not just having a gold medal that can be achieved by anything that is really important to you. But yeah, one word I would say: relief. relieved and proud. Yes.
Yeah. And what about now? You know, like after that, you've gone more or less into full-time coaching, and you're doing that, and you're passionate about, you know, giving forward what you have. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I started to become a professional coach, full-time coach, when in 2015, and ever since I'm still doing this job. I'm very passionate also about coaching, because just as a skydiver, I always want to try to be the best coach in the world. I'm not saying I am, but that's always the goal. I always try to keep evaluating my own the way that I teach, and I try to get feedback from my students, and try to keep improving things. And clearly I still have a big passion for flying, and I love our sport. And also one of the things is, I don't consider myself so much like a belly flyer. I see myself more as a flyer, or like a skydiver, you know, because I know we like to put ourselves always in groups, like, yeah, I'm a belly flyer, oh, I'm a free flyer, oh, I'm a wingsuit, or whatever. We all share the same passion, the same, you know, the biggest arena in the world, you know, is the sky. So it's, and I also trying to bring my passion to my students. You know, usually people that want to fly with me are usually quite competitive. So this is also where I have the most passion and competitive training. And I try to teach them everything that I know, and clearly depending on the level that they have, I adjust, of course, the coaching, but the target is always the same, trying to get the 100% best potential out of yourself. Whether you have 10 jumps or you have 10,000 jumps, that doesn't make a difference to me.
Okay. And tell me, like, you mentioned to me earlier that you're doing your pilot's, or you've gotten your pilot's license now. So obviously, like, you're a super curious person. And is this one of the secrets for you as well? Is that, you know, there's always the next level that you're going after? Is that what keeps you going, keeps you so successful at what you do?
Yes, I guess that everything that I have a lot of passion for, desire, I always want to excel in it. At least I want to be the best that I can be, and whether that will be then the best in the world or just at a local level, that doesn't matter. But yes, I'm very curious. There's a lot of sports, there's a lot of hobbies. I have a lot of interest, but I just have 24 hours a day. And this is a bit my problem, that sometimes I feel like, I'm not doing enough with my life. But actually I cannot do more because I'm already so busy with a lot of stuff. But I'm fortunate enough that I can do a lot of things that I have a big passion for. And since 1.5 years, I started flying with planes. And to me, this is also a new passion, because one of the things that I really enjoy is that I'm a student again. I start absolutely from zero, because it's not because you're a skydiver and that you spend, I don't know how many thousands of hours in the plane that you're clearly a good pilot. You have advantages for sure, but I enjoy to be a super student, you know, like, well, not a super student, I should say that I'm a student again, starting from zero, and build up the things. And of course I'm competitive, because sometimes I ask in my aero club, hey, do they organize some competitions or something? But they don't understand. They look a bit strange to me, like, hey, what do you mean competing?
Okay. But, sorry, Roy, I'm going to have to cut you short, because we're running out of time, and this is going to be automatically cut in about a minute. But quickly give us just, where can people find you? Your email, your Facebook?
Yes, so people that like to get in touch with me, so for Facebook, you can just find me under Roy Janssen. You can maybe just put it in the chat. And otherwise, always feel free to drop me an email. And the email address, that would be roy.fscoaching@gmail.com. Actually, I can probably write it here. Huh?
There you go. So yeah, everyone, give Roy a big thank you. I'm going to unmute everyone's mic. So just shout out a big fuck yeah for Roy. Thank you. Go.
Fuck yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.